Have you ever seen a creature abandoned, lost in the world, but still waiting for a miracle? On a cold, rainy night, in the middle of a deserted road, there was a skinny, exhausted golden retriever lying motionless. Betrayed and abandoned, it had lost all faith in humanity. But then, something unexpected happened. What made it rise after days of despair? Is love strong enough to pull a soul back from the darkness? Before we continue, please comment and let us know where in the world you are watching this video from. And if you believe in touching stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel now, because tomorrow there will be a special story just for you. Have you ever felt like the world has turned its back on you? That no matter how hard you try, all you get is coldness and abandonment? If you have, then listen to this story, because it might change the way you look at love, loyalty, and even yourself. The rain tore through the sky, pouring a thick layer of water over a small town in the Alaskan woods. Each cold drop of rain hit the wet asphalt, reflecting the dim light from the flickering street lamps. In that scene, a small, trembling shadow appeared, lost in the harshness of nature. It was once a proud golden retriever, with a coat as shiny as the rays of the morning sun, eyes full of the passion of life. But now, it was just a haggard figure, its golden fur matted with mud, covered in cold rain. It could no longer feel the cold. It could no longer feel anything. Day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, it waited, hoping that someone would come back for it. But then, when hunger tore it to the point where it no longer had the strength to bark, when the night winds cut through its fragile skin, it began to wonder, what am I waiting for? Can you imagine? One day, you were left without an explanation. The person you trusted the most, the person you loved the most, suddenly disappeared. You ran after it, screaming in despair, but all you saw was a car speeding away, not slowing down for a second. You stood there, in the wind and rain, waiting day after day, but no one came back. What would you do? Will you continue to wait or let it all go? Rusty chose to wait. In the early days, he tried to follow the trail. The familiar scent of his master gradually faded in the rain. Every step was torture, because his feet were torn after running for many miles. He was hungry, he was thirsty, but most of all, he was in pain. Not physically, but because of an unanswered question. Why? Why did the person he loved the most abandon him? Why didn't they come back? What did he do wrong? In the following days, Rusty stopped running. He lay still on the side of the road, where he believed his master would come back to find him. The rain poured down, the wind was bitterly cold, and cars kept rushing by without anyone stopping. He used to think that humans were good and loving, but now they were just passing shadows, indifferent and cold. Gradually, even hope began to leave him. He had no strength left to stand up. He didn't want to stand up either. Perhaps it would be easier to close his eyes and let the rain wash everything away. But then, at the moment he gave up all hope, something changed. An old Jeep slowly crawled across the slippery road. Unlike the other cars rushing by, it stopped. Rusty didn't bother to look up. He had hoped, he had expected, but every time before, the car doors just slammed shut and disappeared. But this time, something was different. The car door opened. A figure stepped out. The sound of light footsteps echoed on the wet road. Another scent reached Rusty's nose. The scent of someone not unfamiliar, not cold. It was a warm, life-giving scent, but also carried a hint of loneliness. A soft voice rang out in the rain. "Oh my God." For the first time in days, someone had seen it. Not a glance, not a momentary pity. Someone had seen it. The woman knelt, her eyes following Rusty's trembling body. She gently touched its wet fur, feeling the cold radiating from its small body. Rusty shivered slightly. Her hand was warm. But could it trust her? Was this another fragile hope that would soon be extinguished? It didn't know. But for the first time in days of pain, its heart was moved. She gently took off her coat, wrapping it around its trembling body. A simple gesture, but warmer than anything he had felt in days. And then for the first time since being abandoned, Rusty let someone pick him up. If you've made it this far, it means you have a seed of love inside you. A precious seed that not everyone has. Rusty's story doesn't end here. But if you believe that love can heal, if you believe that even the most broken souls deserve a chance, leave a like to let us know you're here. Because this story isn't just about an abandoned dog. It's about us. A story about those who have been hurt, who have been left behind, but still dare to believe in a miracle. If you have ever looked into the eyes of a helpless creature, you will understand that there are pains that do not need to be expressed in words. But what do you do when you are faced with a life on the brink? Do you step over like everyone else? Or do you stop and reach out to save it? Olivia Hart sat silently at the wheel, her hands still shaking slightly. Her breath mingled with the faint mist on the car window, where the dim streetlight shone through. Beside her, the small golden retriever was curled up in the seat, breathing weakly but steadily. She still remembered the feeling of placing her hand on its cold body, the feeling of touching a life hanging between life and death. How long has it been? She wondered, her heart aching. How long had it been lying there, abandoned in the cold rain, in cars passing by without mercy? How long had it been waiting for someone to stop? The questions echoed in her mind, but there were no answers. Olivia glanced at the small creature beside her. Its fur was still damp, covered in dirt. For the first time in days, it was warm. But would this warmth be enough to pull it back from the brink? Reaching for a soft towel, Olivia gently dried its drooping ears. She could feel the faint blue veins beneath its dry skin. This dog had endured so much, and yet somehow it was still here. A small warrior in the storm. The old Jeep rolled down the rain-soaked road. On both sides of the road, the dark trees swayed in the strong wind. Olivia stepped on the gas, bringing the small creature to the only place she could think of, her home. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, waves of warmth radiated from the heating system, enveloping the dog's shivering body. Suddenly, she heard a soft gasp. Olivia turned, only to see its tired eyes half open. The light from the dashboard reflected off its deep, ocean-like eyes. They were no longer the empty eyes they had been before. There was something different in them now, a faint glimmer of life. It was realizing that it was still there, that someone had stopped. "It's okay, baby," Olivia said softly, like a promise. But did it trust her? Have you ever been so hurt that you stopped trusting anyone? Have you ever wanted to reach out, but then pulled back for fear of being abandoned again? Rusty had too. When Olivia brought it into the house, its body was still shaking, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. A fear that was ingrained in its instincts. Olivia gently placed it in front of the fireplace, the heat immediately spreading, wrapping it like an invisible embrace. She took off her rain-soaked coat, carefully drying each strand of fur. Rusty did not resist, but it did not accept it either. It just lay there, motionless. She knew this feeling well, the feeling of a creature accustomed to loss, accustomed to promises that no one kept in the end. It did not dare to believe in hope anymore. But Olivia did not rush. She just sat there, letting it understand that it was no longer alone. A moment later, footsteps sounded. Ethan, her brother, leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked at Olivia and then at the small creature in front of the fireplace. "You saved another stray dog?" he said, his voice mixed with a bit of reproach, but also full of concern. Olivia did not answer. She just looked at Rusty. Ethan sighed, walked over, and sat down next to his sister. "Look at him." His voice trailed off. Rusty didn't react. He didn't look up, didn't look scared or happy. He just lay there, staring at the dancing flames in front of him. The sight made Olivia's heart sink. She had seen stray dogs scared, ferocious, even fighting back when they were rescued. But she had never seen a dog so empty. A dog that didn't want to fight anymore. "What happened to you?" Olivia whispered. There was no answer. There was only the steady sound of rain outside the window, and the flames still dancing silently. But then, something very small, very fragile. Rusty stirred slightly. Not much, just a slight twitch of the head. But to Olivia, that was all. It is not a creature that has completely given up. Perhaps deep down, it still wants to believe. Olivia smiled slightly. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of a journey of healing. If you have followed this far, it means that you are a person with a warm heart. A person who knows that every creature in this world deserves a second chance. Do you think Rusty can find faith again? Do you think he can love again? If you believe in miracles too, give this story a little boost by leaving a like to let us know that love still exists in this world. Rusty is not just an abandoned dog. He is the embodiment of all of us. Those who have suffered, those who have lost. Do you believe that a moment can change a life? That sometimes, just a small action, a touch, a look, a drop of water, can bring life back from the brink? If you're still following this story, you're not just an animal lover. You're a person with a warm heart who appreciates life, even the most fragile. But remember, not everyone is lucky enough to have a second chance. Please continue to follow us, because Rusty doesn't know that the moment he swallows that drop of water, everything will change forever. In Olivia's small room, the flickering firelight bounced off the wooden walls, illuminating the shape of a small, trembling creature. Rusty lay there, his eyes glazed over, as if he were drifting off into the distance. But then, a faint light flashed by. He drank the water. For the first time in days, its exhausted body accepted something from a human. It was a small sign, almost insignificant. But to Olivia, it meant everything. She looked at the poor creature before her, feeling her heart sink. A normal dog would react instinctively to being touched by a stranger. It might growl, whine, or cower in fear. But Rusty, he did nothing. He just lay there, silent, as if he no longer believed anything was worth fighting for. It wasn't surrender. It was despair. Olivia reached out to gently touch its matted fur, her heart filled with unanswered questions. Who did this to you? Who left this long scar on your body? Who took the light from your eyes? Ethan stood there, arms crossed, eyes thoughtful. He had seen Olivia save many animals before, but he had never seen his sister look like this. A mixture of anger, pain, and fierce determination. "Liv, you have to be careful," he said, his voice low. "I don't think this is just a stray dog." Olivia looked up, her eyes meeting her brother's. "What do you mean?" Ethan walked over, sitting down next to Rusty. He didn't touch him, just watched him. "This scar." He pointed to the mark on Rusty's left shoulder. "It wasn't an accidental wound. Someone did this. And if they could do this to an innocent dog, are you sure you want to get involved in this?" Olivia knew her brother was right. But when she looked at Rusty, she knew she couldn't turn away. She doesn't care what its past is. She only knows that it's here now, and it needs her. Have you ever wondered if the people who hurt Rusty are still out there? We often think that evil only exists in stories, but the truth is that there are people who are willing to do cruel things to the weakest creatures. Rusty may have been a happy dog with a home and family, but one day someone took it all away. He may have been beaten. He may have been abandoned. He may have been treated as an object with no value. And now he lies before Olivia, a mere shadow of his former self. But what's the miracle, you know? No matter how painful it is, creatures like Rusty can still find love again, if someone would give them a chance. Olivia looked at Rusty for a long moment, then stood up. "Can you help me?" Ethan sighed. "I knew it." Together, they prepared a more comfortable place to lie down, placing a warm towel under Rusty's thin body. Olivia poured some warm water into a bowl, holding it under his nose. Rusty didn't drink it right away, but at least this time, he didn't turn away. It was a start. Olivia carefully examined each wound on his body, gently stroking his head with gentle hands. "This time, no one will abandon you again," she whispered. He might not have understood those words, but his eyes fluttered, a small signal that somewhere deep inside he wanted to believe. Only, could he? "You came here with us, proving that you have great compassion. You know that every life in this world is precious. And perhaps you also know that there are creatures out there waiting for a chance. You can be the one to give them that chance. If this story touches you, please share it. Not just for Rusty, but for the millions of other creatures who are still fighting every day to find someone who will never abandon them. Because true love never leaves anyone. It is just waiting for someone brave enough to find it. Have you ever felt like a part of you was forgotten, drifting somewhere in the mists of memory? Have you ever had a moment when your heart told you that something important was missing, but you didn't know how to find it? Rusty had lived in the darkness of pain for too long, but today, a memory was awakening. Something was calling to him. 3 days had passed since the night Olivia had found Rusty on the side of the cold road. 3 days of deeper sleep, of small meals that he reluctantly accepted. 3 days of silence. Though his body had recovered somewhat, Rusty's eyes still held a deep sadness. He was no longer afraid of Olivia, nor was he as evasive as before. But he did not smile, wag his tail, or appear happy like other dogs. Olivia couldn't help but wonder, did he still remember how to love? She had seen wounded animals regain their faith in life. With a little time and a little patience, they would slowly learn to trust humans again. But Rusty, he wasn't like that. There was something different about him. He wasn't just abandoned. He was waiting. But what was he waiting for? That morning, the sky was covered in a thick fog. Olivia placed the bowl of food in front of Rusty. She expected him to eat right away, But instead, Rusty just stared at the bowl and then looked up at the window. His ears pricked up. His eyes weren't as distant as before. A subtle but powerful change. Something in his mind was awakening. "Rusty?" Olivia called softly. But before she could react, he sprang to his feet. She had never seen him move so fast. Rusty burst out of the living room, shoved open the door, and dashed across the porch. "Wait! Where are you going?" Olivia shouted, hurrying after him. Under the drizzle, she saw Rusty running through the wet streets, his feet pattering in puddles but not slowing down. Every step seemed to be guided by some invisible force. He knew where he was going. Olivia had never seen him like this. She ran after him, but the world seemed to blur. Only Rusty was left, running as if his very soul depended on something ahead. Across the gravel road, across the rain-soaked trees. Then the road opened into a small residential area. Rusty didn't hesitate. He ran toward an old house, stopping dead in front of the wooden steps. The door was ajar. A faint light shone from within, and at that moment, a middle-aged man appeared. He stopped, eyes wide, as if he had seen a ghost. "Rusty?" Just one word, but it seemed to pierce straight into the dog's soul. Rusty stood still. Its eyes stared at the man in front of it, as if trying to confirm something. And then, as if all the waiting had been broken, it rushed straight at him. A gasp. A moment of clarity. Rusty buried his head in the man's chest, like a child seeking its parent's embrace. He was trembling. His calloused fingers gripped Rusty's soft fur, as if afraid that if he let go, he would disappear again. "I've been looking for him for 4 years. Olivia stood still, her heart clenched as she watched the scene before her. That man, Nathan Whitmore, had lost Rusty in an accident. He had a small family, a warm home, and a loyal dog that was always by his side. But on a stormy night 4 years ago, when Nathan had a car accident and was hospitalized for months, Rusty disappeared. No one knew what happened to him. Months of searching yielded no results. Nathan handed out flyers and posted notices everywhere, but no one found Rusty. Now, 4 years later, Rusty was back. Not because someone brought him back, but because he found his way home. Do you believe in destiny? There are connections that even time cannot break. There are loves so loyal that even when they are hurt, even when they are lost, they still find a way to come back. Rusty did not forget. Even when he was abandoned, even when he had to wander in the snowstorm, even when there were times when he thought he had lost all hope, he still remembered. He remembered Nathan's scent. He remembered the warmth of this house. He remembered that he belonged here. Olivia stood there, feeling as if she had just witnessed a miracle. Rusty had not only found his master, he had found himself. Nathan looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," he choked, looking at Olivia as if she had just given him back the most precious thing in the world. But Olivia just smiled, looking at Rusty. "No, you don't need to thank me," she said softly. "Rusty never really left. He was just looking for his way home. If you have followed this story to this point, it means that in your heart there is boundless love. You understand that true love never goes away. It can be tested, it can be forgotten, but one day it will find its way back. If this story resonates with you, please comment below. Tell us about it. Have you ever lost something and then found it again? Because chances are, someone out there is finding themselves, just like Rusty. Rusty had found his way home, but perhaps What he was looking for was more than just a home. Nathan Whitmore sat down on the old steps, his arms wrapped around Rusty as if he were afraid that if he blinked, he would disappear again. His breath was shaky, his calloused hands tightly gripping the soft fur that he had long thought he had lost forever. "I've been looking for you for the past 4 years." His voice broke as if all the pent-up emotions in his heart could only melt in this moment. Rusty was silent, just burying his head in Nathan's chest, his eyes half closed, listening to each familiar heartbeat. It was the sound of home, a sound that no matter how long he had been lost, he had never forgotten. Olivia stood from afar, her heart tightening as she witnessed that scene. There was something about Rusty that made her unable to look away. Where had he been for the past 4 years? What had he experienced? Who was it that had tormented it, left that painful scar? And most importantly, how did it find its way back? Sometimes we think of animals as mindless creatures, without memories, without emotions. But Rusty, it remembered. It chose to find the one it loved, against all odds. What kept it alive? Hope or love? Nathan bent down, gently stroking the long scar on Rusty's shoulder. "Someone did this to you." His voice dropped, his eyes darkening. The pain in his eyes was not just the pain of someone who had lost the most precious thing in his life, but also anger, resentment toward those who had the heart to hurt such a loyal creature. "I will find them." Rusty looked up at him, his deep brown eyes glinting in the porch light. It wasn't afraid. It wasn't as empty as the day Olivia found it on the side of the road. But did it need revenge? Maybe not. Maybe what it needed was just these moments, to be back with the person it loved, to feel the familiar warmth, to know that it hadn't been abandoned after all. Nathan smiled, a smile tinged with tears. "But it looks like you have 2 homes." Rusty turned his head. His eyes fell on Olivia, the woman who had held him in the rain, who had wrapped a warm sweater around him, who had waited patiently for him to trust again. And then he wagged his tail. Not a gentle wag, but a strong, life-filled wag, as if to say he understood. Olivia smiled, but there was a strange feeling inside her, a warmth mixed with a hint of regret. Rusty had found its owner, but part of her wondered, would it ever leave? She took one last look at it, then turned and walked away. But as she left the steps, she heard soft footsteps behind her. She turned. Rusty was standing there, watching her. There was no hesitation, no fear. There was only one invisible question between them. "Can I have both homes?" Olivia laughed, nodding. "Of course, little one," because she finally understood one thing. Home wasn't a place. The home was people who never left you. If you'd made it this far, it meant you were someone who longed for a world filled with love. You know that no matter how hard life gets, true love will always find its way back. Thank you for taking the time to read this heartwarming story. If you've made it this far, it means you're a loving person who believes in the good things in life. Rusty is more than just a dog. He's a symbol of loyalty, of love that never fades, and of miracles that still exist all around us. How would you rate this story from 0 to 10? Leave your score in the comments. And if you believe that love has the power to change fate, click like to spread this message to more people. Your small actions can make a big difference. If you find this story meaningful, please share to inspire those around you. Who knows, someone out there might need a ray of hope, just like Rusty did. And don't forget, there are still many more wonderful stories like this. Stay with us, because right now, an even deeper story awaits you. Are you ready?